Hey guys, it is Andrew Henderson here from Nomad Capitalist. I'm in Cyprus at our little villa up in the hills and wanted to talk about economic citizenship. It's one of the three, or I would argue four, ways to get a second passport. And there are a lot of misconceptions out there, so I want to explain what it is, who might benefit from it, and go from there. Economic citizenship is, as you might expect, all about economics, all about the money. It is an exchange where you make a donation or you make an investment in a country, and they have some procedures in place that allow them to speed up the citizenship process for those people. It's nice to see that there are some governments that realize that money should mean something, that if you have the resources to pay for something, you get special treatment. It's kind of like in Las Vegas. In all the ways to get a second passport, there are some that are pretty slow, and then there's some which are pretty fast. And economic citizenship is basically the fastest one. It's the same as, you can play the penny slots in Las Vegas, and you get a free glass of wine once in a while, or you can throw $500 chips on the craps table, and they give you a suite, and that's kind of what this is. There are about 8 countries that offer this program formally. There are others that are talked about that are not offering economic citizenships, and we'll go into that. Most of these countries are historically in the Caribbean. They are small islands that often have high debt-to-GDP ratios, high unemployment, industries that have gone out of business, i.e. in St. Kitts and Nevis, the sugar industry, and people need to be taken care of there. And so the government, which doesn't have a lot of other options, turns to selling citizenship. The countries, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, Grenada, Antigua, St. Lucia in the Caribbean, here in Europe, Malta, and right here in Cyprus. In Africa, the Comoros, which is kind of like the ultimate Plan B, inexpensive second passport. And there are some others around the world which are more informal. People talk about Austria, which is really not a program that's available to everybody. There are others that are mentioned. But those are really kind of the main programs where you make an investment, or in one or two cases, mostly actually donation, in one or two cases an investment, and you get a passport in a matter of months. So historically, these programs were in the Caribbean. St. Kitts and Nevis has been around as long as I have in terms of as a citizenship program, since 1984. There, for example, it's $250,000 donation if you're a single person. You can start adding additional money if you have a wife or a husband, if you have kids, etc. And that's money that you'll never see again. You simply pay the money, $250,000 or whatever it may be, and it goes to help people who worked in the sugar industry. Dominica, $100,000 donation, $175,000 for a couple, up from there. Other islands in the Caribbean have similar programs. Here in Europe, of course, it's going to be more expensive, from a little under $1 million in Malta, depending on exchange rates, up to €2 million plus investment here in Cyprus. So you got to have some cash, and in exchange for that cash, you will get a passport in a matter of a few months. I think the record here in Cyprus was 57 days. Mostly you're going to see 4 to 6 month waiting times. If you're from the West, if you're from an emerging country, it might be a month or two longer due to some of the due diligence. So obviously, these countries do have some restrictions. They don't want to take just anyone. They do want people who are not criminals, who don't have HIV, who aren't terrorists, of course. There are a few countries that are excluded from obtaining second citizenship in these countries, namely in the Middle East, in most cases. And other than that, money talks, and you can get a passport. And some of these passports are actually pretty good. Most of the Caribbean programs have access to the European Union, at least. The European programs, of course, you can go pretty much anywhere with an EU passport. And so who would want to do this? You're thinking, okay, that's a lot of money, $100,000, $250,000, $1 million for a citizenship. Well, again, primarily it is people who need better visa-free travel quickly, people who I would say are in business, and they're losing business opportunities. So I've talked to guys who are in Asia, where they have very poor visa-free travel, but they've got clients all over the world and they can't go to service them, so they're losing out on deals because of that. I know people from Israel who can't go to certain countries because they're banned from going to those countries, yet they could do a lot of business there. And so having only an Israeli passport is holding them back. There are even countries where being from the United States hold you back, where you have a disadvantage for having a U.S. passport. So if you're in business and you're missing out on travel or business opportunities, having another nationality may be able to help you, so that if you're Israeli, you can enter as a Dominican, or if you're U.S., you can enter as a Cypriot, for example. So that's one reason. The other reason really is as a way to legally reduce your taxes. So as you may know, folks in the United States pay tax on their worldwide income no matter where they live, even if it's not in the U.S. And so if you're an employee, that can be particularly troubling. I have one friend who makes about $1 million working in the Middle East. And he would not pay any tax there, but because he's a U.S. citizen, he gets the first $100,000 free. After that, he pays. So he pays about $400,000 a year for a country he never lives in. 0 days a year, he pays $400,000. And so for him, being able to go down to Dominica and in 6 months, and for $100,000, becoming Dominican, he could then go to the United States and say, I no longer wish to be an American. I'm handing in my passport, and I'll no longer be subject to your tax. And so in that regard, it's a pretty good ROI for someone like that. If you're an entrepreneur, then it becomes a lot trickier, and obviously this is what I help people with at Nomad Capitalist. But if you're an entrepreneur, you still may have a tax burden. If you're an investor, you may have a tax burden. So we won't go into the specifics in this video, but there are a lot of people in this world who are paying taxes to countries based on their citizenship, not based on where they live. And so having a second passport can help you avoid that. Having a second passport can also help you avoid that in the future. So if you just say, you know what, I'm a business person, I don't really need to renounce my citizenship now, I'm not having problems now, but for $100,000, it's a good insurance policy. I know some guys who, for $100,000, they'd rather have a simplified process than go through the hoops of the other methods of getting a second passport. So this is basically for someone who runs a business, very successful, needs to travel, wants to keep more of their own money, and doesn't want to waste time waiting. They want it now. They want a passport in a matter of months, and for a little bit of cash, you can do that through economic citizenship. Now, I've got a separate video where I talk about avoiding the pitfalls of second passport scams. There are some scams in this industry, so make sure you're working only with legitimate programs. You don't want to throw your money down and waste 50 grand on a Venezuelan program or something, because those don't exist. But if you do the right legitimate programs, you can be an economic citizen in a matter of months and start traveling more, start saving more of your own money, and really have that plan B backup. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com, where we talk all about second passports as well.